What is going on, everyone? I am Travis. This is my good friend Nick Blair. No relation to Trey Blair. They do love nerding out about gear about the same way.
That
Nick,
we do.
What is your job? We are at High Point University, just to clarify for those who are watching. What is your job here?
I am an instructor of media production, and I'm also our XR specialist.
XR specialist. That's how you know this video is going to be good. So we are in, do we call it the QCOM? Is that?
QCOM, or School of Communication,
School of Communications, QCOM. We're at specifically in Studio A. So Studio A, there's Studio B behind you. John, you don't have to pan and look at that. We will get there in a moment. There is the CER back behind this giant, beautiful LED wall from Square V. And then there's a control room. And what we're going to do today is we're going to talk through all of it and try not to gloss over. There's a lot of stuff.
There is a lot.
That we have to talk
Quite a lot, yeah.
Let's start specifically in Studio A.
Sure.
What do you want to talk about?
Probably start with the elephant in the room, the beautiful Square V wall that we have behind us. We've got a 24.5 foot by just under 10 foot wall that we have here behind us.
I can dunk on that wall. Can't dunk on a real basketball hoop, but I could dunk on that. Continue.
It is kind of the shining star of this space for both our broadcast production, but also our XR production that we'll get into in a little bit.
What is the pixel pitch?
This is a 1.9 pixel
1.9.
pitch.
So
Yes.
1.9 wall, the raster size of it, the width total is 3,840
Yes.
pixels wide, which is UHD width.
Yep.
So we're actually sending, and another fun thing about this that we'll get into later, but this is a 4K facility. So this entire system is UHD. So what are we cropping top and bottom? Or are we just cropping
We're cropping
bottom?
just bottom.
Okay,
So we go about 1536. So
Okay.
we've got about 1536 high. And then we are sending the bottom 604 pixels. We just don't see them there on the wall.
Yeah. So the story with the LED wall.
Sure. So this was actually not the wall we were originally supposed to end up with. Throughout the process of kind of bids and putting together the layout of this space, we originally were going to go with a Ross D3 wall. We've got Ross integrated pretty much in every other component of this studio space. We have an official partnership with Ross, so that was kind of just hand in hand something we wanted to go ahead and do. And about 6 weeks prior to our wall being delivered was when Ross was no longer going to be staying in the LED wall game and was getting out of utilizing D3.
It is December. We're wanting to open in January.
Yep.
And we just find out that our LED wall that we waited 3 months for is not going to be here.
Yep.
So we pivot to
Square V.
Square V.
And as a testament to Travis, SES, and Square V, they knew our original deadline, and they said, we're going to go ahead and do what we can to try and get you something at least for that deadline, even if we can't get the full wall in that standpoint. They got us the full wall in record-breaking time, but to hold us over in between then, they actually sent us a temporary wall to have in the space so we could have something, start getting our classes going, start messing around with some of our production elements that were integrated into the wall, and then over the course of a weekend, towards the end of February, SES and Travis's guys came in, took out the temporary wall, and then put the final wall up.
Yeah. So, I mean, really, all this is only possible because of our great partners with Square V.
Yeah.
I mean, literally, the moment that we found out about the D3 kind of being dissolved, we picked up the phone, we called Square V, and we're like, what is possible? Help us. And, you know, we use Square V on all sorts of other projects. We have a great existing relationship with them. They went the extra mile to make sure that we could get this wall in place. And, I mean, I am super happy with the way it came in.
Oh, I am too.
We actually were able to work with them because even the ground support, because this is a ground supported wall, the ground support was going to be a little bit of an issue. So they were working with us and finding a third-party ground support that we could get in time. It's a pretty nifty little
it is, yeah.
ground stacking, especially for a wall of this size with a little bit of curve to it on the edges. Is there anything we're missing with the LED wall we want to talk about? MX40 processor?
Yes, MX40, which has been fantastic from a user interface standpoint. That software is great. Coming in, none of us here at HPU had ever worked with LED walls really to any technical degree before. One of our faculty members directed the Today Show for 25 years, and he used to say he worked with LED walls all the time. He'd look at it and tell an engineer, hey, do this. And that was the extent of all of our working with LED walls. So
Joe's a good guy.
he's a great guy. from that standpoint, the software that Novastar provides and the usability of the processor has been fantastic. It's been very user-friendly. I've been able to sit down and really sink my teeth into it and feel very comfortable within a couple hours of working with some of the SES guys that I can handle everything we need on that wall.
That's great. All right, so moving on from the LED wall.
The next thing that you see when looking at the wall surrounding it, these beautiful lights, we have about 1 billion lights in here from Chauvet.
Roughly.
We've got more light than we know what to do with, but these have been a star as well. These have been fantastic. They've not only helped with obviously lighting conditions and stuff like that, but from a presentation standpoint, these have been amazing. They are all RGB controllable. Most of them are motorized as well. We've got gobos, rotating gobos. From a presentation standpoint, it's allowed us to take this space not just from a production space, but also to a live event space. We hosted an annual awards show in here a couple weeks ago. Both students and faculty and parents were amazed with what we had going on. We had moving lights, we had lights changing color, we had a gobo with a logo on the ground.
Gobo with the logo.
Gobo with the logo. They've just been fantastic. So that's kind of the next biggest element that we have.
Yeah, and to just give some, again, he briefly touched on it, but context is important, right? So as we're sitting down and we're discussing what the goals of the space are, flexibility was a huge theme in the overall design conversation. So it can't just be what we would normally do in a studio venue, right? You might look up in the ceiling and see all the different fixtures and think, oh, that's overkill. Well, it is overkill if it was only used for a studio setting.
Yeah.
But we want to be able to use this room in pretty much any orientation for live events and for filming. So like you're saying, this combination of lights, all provided by Chauvet. Chauvet really stepped up to the plate to help us bring this design to life. Great team to work with. Their Fresnels are, the Ovation Fresnels are great, the 915 FCs. We've got some, the Storm
beam washes.
Yeah, the beam washes, some of the Rogue Outcasts.
Yep.
And then we have the Force S profiles. One of my favorite fixtures that we've been using, and we've got one shining on our face right now, is the on-air panel.
Yeah.
So one thing that a lot of people don't realize is Chauvet and KinoFlow are now owned by the same company, and they're integrating some of that same technology together.
Yeah.
So KinoFlow is famous in the film world for the color temperature and their lighting on sets, and it looks amazing. They're incorporating some of that technology into the on-air panels. Very accessible price point.
Oh yeah.
And beautiful look altogether. So
yeah, they've been fantastic. They've been kind of like the hidden gem of this whole lighting setup that we have here.
Anything else on, let's talk about infrastructure for the lights.
Yeah.
So there was a pre-existing SSRC lighting distribution. We had ETC Unison with two of the 96 channel dimming racks. So there's a whole crap ton of power inside of this building. Moving over to LED, we don't need that anymore, right? We don't need that much power anymore. So what we ended up doing was we switched over all of the power in this space to, we kept it in ETC, we went to the relay panels. So we're the Smart IQ, we've got two of the Smart IQ 48s to power this whole facility. And we don't have Paradigm, actually. We don't have wall control for a architectural lighting control. We're doing all of that via streaming ACN, and we're controlling presets on q-sys. Q-sys is what allows us to be able to use this room. So again, talk about functionality and flexibility. Nick doesn't want to live here. So if Nick is the guy who knows how to make this space function and everything relies on Nick being here, that's going to be a long day for Nick. We don't want that. And that's probably the case for if you're at a university in a similar setting, or if you work at a church where you're the tech guy, you're the only tech guy, and you have all these spaces, and you have a women's ministry that wants to meet inside of a room, and you have a class that wants to come in here and use this, but you don't want to have to break out the whole MA3 console, you don't want to have to break out all of the different, like the soundboard, all of the bells and whistles. You just want someone to be able to walk up and press a button on a screen, and then they're functional. That's what q-sys allows us to do, and it is I call it like the universal remote. It's the backbone to a lot of the systems that we use. So q-sys allows us to do flexibility.
Oh, it's been huge for us.
Yeah.
We can have students come in. We don't need to worry about trying to train them on how to operate the MA3 and getting them to memorize which lights move left when they go up in value, which lights move right when they go up in value. It's just come in, choose your preset. We've got 3 of them. Those are the 3 most basic things you'll ever do in here. And if you're doing a more advanced show, then we can take the time in pre-production to go ahead and get that programmed. But otherwise, everyone can come in, hit a button, and they're good to go.
And so when we're talking about programming, and I've mentioned it briefly, we do have a Grand MA3, a Command Wing
Yes.
XT. So one of my favorite things about this project is what forecast consoles they did for us when it came to the XR system, and we'll talk about that in a moment,
Yeah.
and the lighting desk. So we have the control room that has everything in it. There are reasons why lighting and that other, the XR station are in there, mostly because this is not just a production space, but it's also an educational facility.
Yep.
We've got to teach kids what we're doing, not
Yep.
just make it happen. But we have the ability to push the desk out into this room. The lighting console just comes in here. They plug into the wall plate, as we call it, BSP panel, as you uneducated swine call it. And we can get the networks just to connect just like that.
Yeah.
And as soon as the console comes on, it takes over priority for streaming ACN, and it takes over control of everything.
Yeah.
As soon as the console turns off, then q-sys
It goes right back to
technically
q-sys.
controlling Q server. We're using that to store the scenes just for a safe backup.
And we are also in a building that's more than just media production. We have sports production, we have sport management, we have social media. So these students and faculty aren't always as up to date on current media technological trends as we are. So being able to really let anyone come in and plug and play, you simply take this cable, you plug it into the spot that is labeled for that cable, and you are good to go, has been fantastic.
Infrastructure, it helps.
Infrastructure is very
does help.
important. So we have 4K Panasonic cameras. This is part of a total rig that involves Cartoni heads. We've got a Q-script teleprompting system. We are utilizing Canon lenses. So we've got a couple different Canon lenses. You want to pull that out?
I do want to pull this out.
Yeah.
Because these are very smooth, and why not? It's here.
So we've got a Canon lens, kind of peel that back a bit.
So you can see which one is which.
Yeah, this is not the ultra wide, but we've got 2 different Canon lenses in here. We've got kind of a base lens on 3 of our cameras, which is your kind of standard studio lens. And then on our other camera, our 4th camera, which is technically our middle cam 2, we have a ultra wide lens. And the reason we went ahead and got that wide lens was so that when we're using that camera, if we want to go ahead and get a wide shot of the entire wall, and kind of show some of the studio around it, we have the capability to do that. Like I said, each of our cameras are being augmented with Q-script teleprompting systems. We've used that a couple times in the past. We've been big fans of that, so we've kind of continued that trend. And then we've got our kind of standard Canon focus and zoom controls here on the back.
Panasonic in Q-script, the camera does not give enough power.
Correct, yes.
To give us a D-tap off to power the Q-script.
Yep.
Which was something that we discovered pretty deep into the process, like very, very annoying that wasn't working together. So you'll see that we've got Dragonfly cable going into the camera and an aux power at the moment. We're working through a different power solution for that at the time. That's why things look a little bit messier at the moment. But thoughts on cameras? How have you enjoyed the cameras?
I've loved the cameras. I think they've been absolutely fantastic. I've admittedly worked with these cameras a little less than our other camera we'll talk about in a minute, but I think these have been fantastic. The image quality is great. I remember when we brought Panasonic in to take a look at them, just kind of being blown away by the quality of the camera itself. We've had Hitachis in the past, and those were great. Seeing this Panasonic camera was just like a whole new world. It's got great depth of field. It is a bit shallower, which I love, being more of a film guy.
Yeah.
Especially being able to kind of work that in with our Red camera that is
again, these are
cinema based. Yeah.
Broadcast camera that, I mean, in context to other broadcast cameras, does have a shallower depth.
Yeah, it's a broadcast camera that has a lot of nice optional cinematic-like elements to it, which for me is fantastic.
So we've got the whole camera chain. We've got the UCU 600 for our CCUs.
Yep.
And then we switched out. We had Scarhoys originally spec'd
We did.
for this project instead of the Panasonic RCPs.
Yep.
And the reason being was because We have Panasonics in here. We have a red Komodo X.
Yep.
There are how many Canons do y'all own, C200s?
14 C200s and 40 C100s.
Good Lord.
Yeah.
All right, so the reason why we're looking at Skarhoy is, and why we had originally spec'd Skarhoy, was because of all the different manufacturers that were coming in here. To be able to have an RCP that would be able to control all of them at any given point, if they wanted to add them into the production, they could.
Yeah.
Now, we ran into some issues making the Skarhoys play nice with the CCUs from Panasonic. Everyone says that they have successful installations of them somewhere in the world. We did not have the best experience with that. And so we ended up switching over to the Panasonic RCPs, which creates a much better workflow. The menus are not like it's little things like the menus actually have the labels on the buttons
you can look at it and see what it's supposed to do.
Which, you know, for Skarhoy, the trade-off
is a different workflow.
Yeah, it's a different workflow, but you can assign the buttons to do different things. Thus, there's not menus on them, but in hindsight, in this application, it makes a lot more sense for there to be able to have that label.
Yeah, especially from an educational standpoint. For our students sitting down, most of the time when they sit down there for the first time, they've never seen a CCU RCP before. So for us, being able to have everything nice and labeled and be able to point out this is what this button does and it only does this button at any time works great for us. From a professional standpoint, you know, being able to customize stuff is always great. So the Skarhoys definitely have their purpose. They just didn't necessarily fit exactly with what we were looking to do.
Okay, so we've talked about the broadcast cameras. Now let's move over to, there is another camera that we have out.
There is.
What is the camera body?
So this is a red Komodo X, 6K sensor, and this is our primary XR production camera.
So we're gonna get into something called XR.
Yes.
And we have supporting that, the actual rendering engine is gonna be from Ross Voyager.
Yep.
And so just talk very briefly about what XR is and why we're doing it in this installation.
Sure. So XR production is essentially the next evolution of green screen, if you want to think of it that way, where green screen allows you to replace this green background with essentially a still image, and you can shoot up against it, it works great, but if you start to move around that, you're still getting the same view of that still image. The image isn't rotating with the movement of your camera. XR production takes popular video game engines like Epic's Unreal Engine and allows you to build a 3D world that your camera can be tracked inside of. So as you move your camera around that world, the view that you're seeing in there is actually changing as well. So that uses an LED screen to kind of display that world. And if you go ahead and move this, you'll see as we rotate here, our view is actually moving in the world and we're getting some parallaxing that's happening as well. And if you look kind of off to the right-hand side of the screen, there's actually a couple picture frames there. So they are currently tagged as mirror objects. So you're seeing kind of a little wonkiness happen with the picture moving in and out, but that's because it's actually tracking where that picture is supposed to be in relation to that camera.
So that's a lot.
It is.
There's a lot to it.
Yeah, it's a very involved process.
And I know that this has been a growth curve, quite frankly, for both of us.
Yeah.
You more than me. Not because I know more by any stretch, but because you know more and you took it to a whole other level. So I do know that we're using the Ross Voyager engines to be able to do that, as well as, so you can use Ross Robotics to incorporate the tracking software that is necessary to make that parallax work.
Yep.
We're not using that. We're using like a third-party jib type of thing and a third-party tracking system.
Yep.
So the third-party tracking system is Red Spy by Stipe.
By Stipe, yep.
And so there are a bunch of infrared dots in the ceiling.
Yes.
And it is using this little PoE device that's going back to its little server inside of the control room that is feeding into data into the Voyager system. So it's essentially giving Voyager what it needs, the positional data it needs to be able to create that parallax.
It is, yep. And it's also giving it lens data as well. So it's taking data coming straight out of the lens. We've got a Canon 17-120 Cine Servo lens there. So we've got that hooked in right to the Stipe Red Spy system. So our zoom and focus data is also coming from there to adjust kind of what you're seeing on that wall or what the camera is capturing in real time as well.
One thing to note is, I mean, the bones of this structure were, they weren't going to change. Like And there's not really a good spot to put a 24-foot wide LED wall other than literally right there.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
we knew that going into this, we were going to be having a shallow situation from camera lens to wall.
Yep.
So we had to have a finer pitch wall, and we had to make sure that our lenses were wide enough but had a shallow enough depth of field. So that's why that 17 to 120 works really well in this application.
Yeah.
So why did you decide ultimately, because we were going back and forth on what cameras that were going to work best for this application.
Sure.
Why did you guys want to go with the Red Komodo X?
So there's a couple technical specifications we need to meet.
Like
Global shutter is a necessity because you're working with a wall, especially with our reduced distance. Making sure we're not getting any sort of scan lines in there is really important. But then also we need Genlock. So the benefit of the Komodo X is it's got both of those natively built in. We've got Genlock built in as well as an internal global shutter. Very few cameras that are cinema focused actually come with those capabilities. Most of your broadcast cameras are. So our Panasonic cameras can actually go ahead and be very easily augmented to fit into a virtual production standpoint or kind of workspace. But for cinema cameras, your options are a bit more limited. Obviously, your really high-end cameras are going to come with that stuff. But we are also working on an educational budget, so we can't just spend 150 grand on our camera package. So the Komodo X was fantastic in terms of a technical capability, a price point standpoint, but also from an image quality standpoint. Red has a very good history of having really strong image quality, so it kind of just ticked every box we were looking for us.
Yeah. Yeah, the image quality has been very good.
It's been fantastic.
Obviously, looks great. And one of the things that we love to see from an integration standpoint is Red is stepping up their game when it comes to broadcast.
Yeah.
So you've seen it more in church world than necessarily in educational space, but
Yep.
there is this craze of wanting to have cinema look in a broadcast setting, which has caused all sorts of annoyances when you're trying to work in broadcast workflows with broadcast systems. And so, you know, we've used Canons over the years, we've used Panasonics over the years. This is one of our first time stepping out and partnering with Red. We have a great relationship with some of the staff members over there. And to see the development that they've had leaning into the broadcast world has been really, really encouraging. They're working on their own CCUs, they're working on their own RCPs, they're working on their own fiber back solution that is all proprietary to Red, which is amazing. So you are looking at different camera packages, something that is to be considered is not just the color science, but the workflow. And Red is stepping up in both of those ways. One of the limiting factors, however, working with the Komodo X specifically, is having one single SDI output. So we had to do a workaround to be able to get someone to be able to see what's happening on the screen down here in this jib setup by doing a 12G monitor with a 12G throughput. Introducing some potential failure points into the system that we would rather not have, but it's what allows us to make it happen.
It does, and so far with what you guys have put together for us, it's worked fantastic. So, you know, nothing's ever going to be perfect, but
it can be. Red, let's get some more I/O on these Komodo X's, please. I understand the V-Raptor has more, but let's get some on the Komodo X's, please.
I would certainly not be opposed to that. But, you know, it's definitely been a fun learning experience working with it and kind of really challenging ourselves from a instructional standpoint to figure out how we can go ahead and present this stuff to our kids in the most easy to digest fashion. So
let's talk about this jib for a second.
Sure.
I call this the Nick pick because you sent this to me and said, this is what I would like to use. We've never worked with Kessler before. I'll say their customer support was very easy to work with. I like those guys a lot. It is definitely closer to a prosumer level crane, not something that we typically do. And it was this way for budget purposes. Because we were rather spend money on a lens that looks great than, you know, a jib. How has it serviced you for what you're trying to do?
Oh, it absolutely has. You know, perfect world, I would have loved to have gone with something really big and sturdy that's kind of your normal broadcast studio space sort of jib,
Yeah.
which we have a jib. It's just like 6 times the size. So again, size constraints played a big role. Budget played the biggest role in what we were going with. So far, we've been thrilled with it.
Yeah, I'll say it's a little easy. Like when it's locked up, you do not want to try to move it when it's locked. I mean, that's a given with any jib, but like this one will knock it off of center pretty easily. So not something that we would recommend in a larger broadcast setting.
Absolutely.
Again, you're saying size and budget were absolutely decision-making factors inside of this purchase.
We've got not just their kind, but their Kessler remote control head up there as well, their control panel back
we
here.
can move around a little bit.
So not only are we getting the jib itself, but a lot of the peripherals outside of basically this monitor came from Kessler as well. So they sold a complete unit, which was big for us.
Yeah, a little robotics head to help the motion look smooth on the XR side.
Yep. Telescoping arm, which has been great as well. We've had a couple of usages where we needed it to be really long because we needed to get a nice sweeping movement, but then some XR uses where we need to maximize the amount of space we have, so we can easily just kind of pull that arm back in, shorten it up, and get really versatile with it.
Yeah.
Again, kind of that overall theme of this space was versatility, and a lot of the gear that we have in here was chosen or picked around that.
Yeah. Anything else in this space that we want to talk about?
No, I think we probably covered everything here. We can.
Well, let's talk about the desk for
You
a
want
second.
to get over to the desk?
Yeah.
Sure.
Let's talk about the desk real fast.
So
we are now at the news desk.
we are.
So not only is this an XR studio, like a post-production type of soundstage, but we do broadcasts. I say we.
do.
You guys do broadcasts in
Yes.
here, which was another consideration as to what the system needed to look like and why we went with the UC 4000s for the Panasonic cameras.
Yeah.
Broadcast cameras for a broadcast, like a news type of broadcast.
Yep.
So we do have this desk behind us. We did not provide this desk, but it does have some features I'd like to talk about. So
Sure.
it is DMX controllable.
It is. Yep.
Which means that we needed to have some nodes readily available, which we have nodes. We have different data points throughout the room on BSP panels for us to be able to put in a node and run into the desk.
Yeah.
So how's your experience been with it so far in terms of as you guys are doing a news broadcast?
It's been good. You know, the ability to go ahead and plug this desk in wherever we want it.
Yeah.
Currently, we've got it over here in the corner because we're trying to show off the space and show off as much as we can for tours and prospective students coming by. So we've got it in the corner here, but we can easily, and we have, move it over into the center here, use it in front of the wall as a kind of broadcast standpoint. We can put it over in Studio B if we're looking to divide stuff up a bit, or we can just go ahead and customize our lights and do a little shoot here. If we need to put in a really awkward spot just to get it in a certain area and we don't have a wall plate right there, we've got the ability to just get a longer Cat6 cable, plug it in, and we can run it to a wall plate that they're around far enough in each little corner of the studio space that there's really not any one time you would be locked out due to cable length from being able to hook it up.
That's true. 8 universes around as well. So
Yes.
which, I mean, granted, with the lighting rig that is here, we're using pretty much all of it.
Yeah.
But there's flexibility in location for floor package of lights.
Yes.
We are sitting inside of Studio B. We sat down because we were tired of standing. There's just so much to talk about. So we're gonna sit as we talk through this one. So there's actually not a lot to talk about inside of here.
There isn't, and that's kind of intentional. You know, really the only tech-based thing we have in here, we've got a studio camera here at the moment, but
We just rolled that.
we rolled that in.
It's just for mix.
that's to make it look pretty, but really the only other tech thing we have in here is the lights. And that's done very intentionally. We want this space to be the open space that really anything you need to do, you come in, you've got 4 black walls with a black curtain, a white curtain, and then a green screen that's behind the white curtain behind me here, and go crazy with it.
Yeah.
Whatever you need, fully customizable. We try and keep this space as open as possible with all the same customization that we have in Studio A, so that if you're doing a narrative production, you need a soundstage, you're doing a commercial, whatever it is, you can come in here and customize this space to what you need.
And the thing that I love most is it's still tied into the overall video router
is,
that we're
yes.
using. So every space inside of here is tied together through tie lines into the video router, which we're using a Ross FR5 Ultrix. Anything else we want to say? Again, more on-air panels, more Ovation Fresnels, more of the Maverick Storm beam washes, more of... Are there any of the Rogues in here?
There are not any Rogues in here. Those are only in A.
Okay.
But I believe we do have one of the, which I think you might mention, the Storm profiles.
The Rev E3?
The Rev E3, yep, we do have one of those in here as well, which we have the automated go-to rotator built into that as well. So,
pretty neat. Chauvet's doing some cool stuff, and it's affordable.
They are. They're doing, and price point, as you mentioned, is just fantastic.
Yeah.
You know, we put together this lighting stuff, and we kind of calculate all of our lights, and we're like, we are out of our minds. There's no way we're going to be able to afford this. And then the price came through, I was like, this is amazing. This is great. So I can't speak highly enough about Chauvet and our experience with them.
Another helpful thing was in the decision-making process.
Yeah.
We were able to tour their facility. They brought demos to this space. Their team was really great to work with.
Yeah, they've been fantastic. Really, every vendor that we've worked with has been great. And everyone's been willing to go that extra mile for us. And, you know, I'm sure customer service and everything is always at the front end of everyone's mind, but I put a lot of that on you guys as well in establishing those great relationships and bringing them to us already having a good standard.
Listen, man, when y'all break stuff, like, we got to stand with the manufacturer to be like, let's fix this right now. Because your students are going to break stuff.
Oh, they are going to break stuff. They are very uniquely skilled in that standpoint.
It's learning. We're all learning. We're all having a good time. All right, speaking of good time, there's a good time in the control room.
There is a good time in the control room.
Because there are more chairs.
There are more chairs. So
do we sit or do we need to stand? All right, so we are now in the video control room, and this is where we hold classes. I say we again, that's you. You're holding classes in here, talking about broadcast stuff. So we're gonna talk about the layout of the room, where each position is. But one thing we want to hit on for sure is the Forecast furniture inside of the space.
Yeah.
We love working with Forecast when it comes to designing control room spaces because their furniture is top notch.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's been amazing. I've been thrilled with this furniture. I wasn't really involved in the furniture discussions on the front end. I kind of came in later to that, but when you guys delivered this stuff and started setting up, I was like, this is amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like from the ability to have the monitor arms built right into the desk and be modular. You can move them around. You can add as many as you need. It's just been a great experience for me as both an educator, but also as kind of a studio operator to be able to customize each station as needed for exactly what we're going for.
Something that looks cool is the LED cut-ins on the edges.
Oh, absolutely.
They're so sharp in a space like this.
Yeah. Well, and it's the little things like that that the kids just kind of go crazy for, especially prospective students and parents. It's a look that really helps this room shine, especially like you'd said, when the lights are off, they're walking by, they're a tour, they got a junior or a sophomore that's just starting to look at colleges. And the thing that catches their eye, they're going by, like, wow, it's a really nice purple highlight to everything in there, which fits our overall theme as a university.
Yep.
But it's eye-catchy, it's poppy, and just makes the room feel modern and nice.
Yeah.
So
again, not always necessary in this application where there's a big old glass door that people are walking by. We want the room to shine because it's a recruitment tool as well in a university setting. So let's walk down the stations and talk about the technology here, and then we'll just start moving our way back. So first, the furthest down left position is?
That is our CCU, engineer, color control, kind of however you want to refer to it. This is where we are doing all of our camera control. We have the Panasonic RCPs that we talked about earlier on. We have a Plura monitor there, and we also have a Ultrix RCP that we can use to swap through which cameras we're looking at, or even our program feed, any of our patches here on that grading monitor to make sure we're getting the most color accurate image while we are correcting as we can.
Love it. Let's keep on moving down. So next, we have a TD2S touch drive panel from Ross. This is working alongside of a Carbonite, Ultrix Carbonite blade, which we're going to actually be switching out for Ultra 60 here in a little bit, just because we're already growing past the I/O needs and more of the up converts. Because again, this is a 4K facility, UHD facility. not always wanting to have UHD material be feeding it. All the cameras are UHD, but if a kid is making something, we don't have to want them to do a UHD.
Yeah. From a kind of computing power standpoint for the students with editing, stuff like that, but also storage size and whatnot. We do kind of have to keep that in mind, working with kids, working with students who aren't necessarily professionals in the field yet. They're not looking to shell out all the money for storage for 4K files. So we kind of, again, need that flexibility to be able to upconvert some 1080 sources when we're working with student media versus what we may put together as faculty.
Yeah, and one of the limitations that we ran into with using the blades specifically, and broader context, is one of the things that is potentially coming in the future is going to be the esports broadcast.
Yes.
Which is a really cool situation where we're going to be looking at having a live cut of esports happening inside of the Studio A space that we were there.
Yep.
It made sense early on in the communications to have two separate carbonite blades inside of the Ultrix. Just from a price perspective and the ability to cut two separate shows, we didn't want one director having to cut all of that.
Yeah.
Because there are tons of sources with that. But we have changed to the Ultra 60 mostly because the upconverting that takes place with the licenses for the carbonite blades. So we thought we had 8 total to play with in UHD mode. It's actually just 4 per blade.
Yeah.
And so while it still services us in the current need and we're able to upconvert, because another thing that we're upconverting is going to be the graphics package with ROS expression.
Yeah.
So we just ran out faster than what we anticipated. And faster than what original conversations called for. So we've made that swap in the design.
Yep.
But the TD2S will still be paired up with the Ultra 60.
Yeah, we're keeping the panel, and
how have you liked the panel so far?
Panel's been great. I've loved the panel. We came from a ROS carbonite before as well, so I am very familiar with kind of the general layout.
Yeah.
Clearly can see some advancements that ROS has made over the years since we first got that panel in 2016.
Yep.
Kind of going by their booth each year at NAB, seeing what they're doing. And I remember we went last year in 2023 and we saw the TD2S. I remember looking, I was like, oh, that's a pretty fun looking panel. And the big thing that stood out to me was all of the kind of touchscreen integration that they've worked in the last couple of years.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then when we got it, I was like, hey, I remember looking at this. This was fantastic. Sitting down, actually getting to work with it, very user-friendly. Your top bus there, we used to go ahead and call the effects bus. ROS has actually changed that to being called a utility bus, which is done so that they can go ahead and put a lot more capability and functionality into those buttons than just being used for an effect like a DV or something like that. So the board is really advanced, but also very approachable. It's not this giant hunking board that is really intimidating to sit down at, and you've got 82 billion buttons very clearly labeled. The buttons aren't overwhelming, and it's easy enough for our students to sit down with labels on everything and figure out exactly what is what.
Yeah, love it. Moving on to the next position, we have?
This is director and then AD to the right of them. So we want to have our director sitting right next to the TD. That way, even if comms go down, something happens, there's no loss of communication between calling the shots and the shots actually being cut.
Yep.
AD being right next to them allows a nice, easy stream of communication between the kind of top 3 positions here that are happening. That position is also flexible enough that we could swap out a producer who's usually on the second row, put them up there if that's needed, and kind of customize around whatever the show calls for.
Yeah, and another thing that makes that flexibility happen is going to be the KVM system that we have here. So we have the Adder 2000 series, the Infinity series. So we have a KVM pretty much at every location, whether it's the Q-script location, whether it's the Softron, the playback station, whatever it may be, the assistant director position, or assistant producer position. It's really great. You can make any of those KVM systems be any of them that you want via the Infinity Manager, which is also something on this job. Very convenient. We'll keep on moving just for the heck of it, making sure that we're on time. But the control room audio, it can be ran, and we can turn on and off the LED wall. We have all sorts of functionality that we have with the q-sys touchscreen up here with the tabletop. Addition to that, some network tie lines. So networking infrastructure for this place, we have the GSM series from Netgear is pretty much present everywhere. Every location there is a switch, and they're all ran back via trunk lines to an SFP caged switch. I can't remember what the model number of that is. We have multiple VLANs, one for Dante, one for Control, one for KVM, one for the streaming ACN. We have a couple different backups, but we had to work in conjunction with the IT team here at High Point to make sure that everything's playing nice, everything's on the network where it needs to be.
Yeah.
Another thing to point out is RTS. So we have the KP3016s is what we're using for the panels for comm inside of this space. One of the things that we love about using RTS, and this is ran off of an Odin frame and Odin software, is going to be that it is Dante based. So we can use Dante protocol. We can throw in easy. We have a Yamaha QL1 that you'll see that they use for broadcast audio in a moment. There's a Dante infrastructure already in this building. We're able to patch in, patch out very easily inside of this space.
Yeah.
Integrates very well with q-sys as well.
Yeah.
All right, so moving on to the next row. What are the next positions?
So we've got...
Let's start here. You're right here.
Start right here. So this is the producer position. Again, kind of customizable between AD, producer. Very similar setup. We do have a dedicated Mac Mini for each position. That's housed back in CER, but kind of like Travis had mentioned, thanks to our adder and our KVM system, you can easily put the director computer here or AD computer displaying on this monitor, producer up there, or you can go ahead and you can take your QScript system and display it on this monitor if need be. If an educational instance for us, for example, we're trying to show off how to operate the q-sys system or the QScript or the Softron system, we can go ahead and thanks to our KVM capabilities, put that on every individual screen, and now we're not having to have 25 kids crowd around one computer monitor. We can spread them out and put, say, 2 kids on each monitor at every station throughout this room and just overlay that display on each location. So from an educational standpoint, it's really important for us. But yeah, this is producer or AD kind of hot swappable there. It's how we approach it. In the middle here, we have our QScript system. So this is our teleprompter system. Like I had mentioned, we have used QScript a bunch in the past. We've been big fans of that. So we've got a dual monitor set up here so you can have your kind of editing software open on the side while you're prompting. Preview window is here on the right. So you can be live updating your prompter as you're going through. And then this is our video playback record station. We use Softron. On the Air Express is our video playback system that we use through them. And then Movie Record is the recording software. So this is another dual screen setup. We have our recording software on one screen, while on the other screen we have our 4 video playback channels, red, blue, green, and purple. Again, customizable, so if we needed to flip these 2 positions or trying to show this off, we can easily KVM into any spot inside this room or even once we connect out to the fiber lines in either studio.
Yeah, so the playbacks, we have, is it 3 1080 and then 1 UHD playback?
We can customize it however we need. We have the ability to go up to all 4 4K. We currently have it set up in a 2 UHD, 2 HD setup. And that is for HD pretty much being our default playback inside of our broadcast workflow, and then the 2 UHD signals, one's feeding the wall and then one's feeding that monitor at the desk.
Yeah. And then as far as the records go, how many records are 1080 versus how many are UHD?
Again, customizable. At the moment, we have 1 UHD program record, 1 HD program record, and then 6 ISO records that are customizable depending on the source. If it's some of the 1080p playbacks, we'll record those 1080. If it's 4K cameras, we're recording those in 4K.
And all that's ran off of one Mac Studio.
Yes.
And we're using a couple Sonnet chassis to work alongside of it because we've ran into a limitation with the Thunderbolt, with the data being transpired through Thunderbolt. So we separated it into 2 Thunderbolts. The computers performed flawlessly.
Yeah, the computer's been fantastic.
And part of that was being able to get the data to the servers quickly.
Yeah.
So the professors could mess around with the footage. Students could mess around with footage fairly easily as well. So that's why we went this direction. And we also have an Aja Key Pro as a backup.
We do.
In case there is a failure going along with that.
Yeah.
So moving right along. And as we're walking by it, we can see the multi-viewers. We've got the multi-viewers via the Ultrix is what we're using for the customizable features. So we got 4 licenses where we would be able to use different customizable multi-viewers.
Yep.
So that's what you're seeing up there. We've got 2 Genelec speakers. I think the model number is the 4430, if I remember
I believe
correctly.
so, yes.
So it's Dante PoE, which fits flawlessly into this system, makes a lot of sense for what we're trying to do. So moving quickly, this is broadcast audio. It is not in a separate space purposefully for educational reasons. Normally, if we're cutting a show or we're doing this in a house of worship setting, we want this to be in a separate room than what video control is. Here, again, education being at the forefront, we needed to make sure it made sense inside of this space. Forecast was very accommodating to our space requirement needs. And we have a desktop version of the 3016, the DKP 3016. I think it's the DKP. Yeah, DKP 3016. Moving on to Expression.
Yes.
So Expression, how many channels of Expression are we using right now?
We have 2 channels of HD Expression. Yeah.
And so we are up converting alpha and
both key
or the key fill, sorry. Up converting key and fill with both of these. So we're using 4 of our up converts from our switchers on graphics, which, you know, it's a trade-off. Financially, there was not a 3-channel or multi-channel UHD version available when we're going through and purchasing. The image quality in the up convert still is fantastic. It's a fairly modern, it's a fairly common practice inside of the broadcasting world anyways. So made a lot of sense. Moving on to the second panel that we have, a TD1. So this is currently, how are you guys using this now? Because we can use the same panel off of, or we can use multiple panels off of one blade.
Yes.
Is that how it's used right now?
At the moment, yes. Because of some of the restraints that we've run into with the up converts, we're primarily using this blade as an up converter. We're taking the frame sync frame converts from that to feed into our TD2 so that we can go ahead and make sure we've got everything scaling the way
on the second blade.
On the second blade, sorry, yes, the blade, not the TD2. But at the moment, we're using that, and the panel is essentially just working as a sub-switch panel for what we can control up there on the TD2 as well. So we're able to go ahead, if we are looking to have a graphics package or DV package ready to go, and we've got someone up there cutting the show, trying to have that TD that's focused on cutting the show that needs to make some sort of DV package in real time because something has happened, is going to be a major frustration for them as they're trying to control everything and cut the show. They need to grow 2 more arms, and it's just not going to be doable. So we've got this second panel back here that would allow either this person to take over cutting of the show temporarily while the primary TD went ahead and made that DVE package, or for them to make the DVE package back here, feed it into one of our mini-me's, either mini-me 2, mini-me 1, and have that ready to go when the director and TD need it.
Yeah, so overall capacity of the system as it currently stands is we have a 2 ME switcher and a 1 ME switcher.
Correct.
We don't have a 3 ME switcher. We have 2 separate systems.
Yes.
And so part of moving to the Ultra is going to be, we're going to combine, we're going to do 3 MEs off of the Ultra 60. So last thing, we're going to jump into the last row of desks. And these desks are my favorite because these are largely needing to be able to have access to what's going on in Studio A. This is the Voyager system.
Yes.
And so we've got 2 KVMs for the Voyager that are happening to switch between the nodes. You need to access both of them. You need to be able to see a rendered version of it. There's a lot that's going on, and you also need to be able to be inside of the room to see it, what's happening. So we will actually take this desk and we will wheel it into the other room, as well as the lighting desk. Again, we talked earlier about a lot of programming that goes on inside of Studio A. We don't necessarily want to have to yell at someone and say, you know, hey, is this moving the right way? Is the fixture turning the right way? Like, you want to be able to program in the room. So having both these desks be able to break apart and move into the rooms easily is pretty great.
Yeah, it is. And being able to program in Studio A where you can see everything happening and then get your show preset, have it good to go, roll the desk back in here so you're not in the way in the studio while the show's trying to happen, and you can operate everything still in here because all you had to do, unplug your fiber, plug it in A, unplug it once you're done, come back in, replug it back in, you've got all your controls back. And you don't need to necessarily be seeing your lights as they move in real time when you're just going through your sequence of cues and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So,
and again, the way that this interacts with the q-sys as well, this has the ability to, as soon as the console turns on, it takes over in priority with streaming ACN. And then as soon as it turns off, then you can go back to the presets on the wall stations.
Yep.
Anything else you want to add before we talk through CER?
no, I think that pretty much covers the space.
Awesome. Let's check it out.
Awesome.
All right, so we are closing out this tech tour in the CER. We crammed a lot of crap into three racks.
That we did.
Again, budget was the reason why.
Yep.
Going back, I would love to take all of this and disperse this amongst 5 racks just to make our lives in installing it significantly easier.
Oh yeah.
But I'm just going to run top to bottom, and if you have any notes, go ahead and throw it out for us. So starting up top, we have a corning box for all of our fiber to be landed. So we have a bunch of fiber, plates inside of the studio that we can have the desk connect to and whatnot. So that's all landing right here inside of this, and then it's going into this fiber patch bay. So the fiber patch bay, we've got certain trunk lines that are connecting to our 16-port SFP switch. It's kind of the backbone of our switch infrastructure.
Yep.
And then we have the 4248s. We have 3 of them, 1 for each rack going down. So every space has a network or has a switch connected to it that's all running back to this bad boy right here.
Yep.
Underneath the 2 network switches, we have a q-sys Core 110F, which is plenty for what we need. We've got the scripting license. We have the 32x32 Dante license. To be able to get Dante, so I think we've got Microflex going in and out of that for the spaces. Yep. So it's very helpful. We have a direct out Xbox, which is a MADI to Dante converter. We're using this as a bridge between the MADI and Dante networks to feed into the Ultrix, because we're embedding audio into the Ultrix with the MADI SFP.
Yep.
This is how we get the 2 protocols to talk to each other. Next, we've got the 2 Sonnet chassis for that Mac Studio that we have all of the ISO records running off of and playbacks running off of. Just this one machine. Pretty awesome. Yeah. It works very well. We've got 3 Mac Minis right underneath it for the various things that we talked about: assistant, director, producer, and Q-Script.
Yep.
Underneath that, LiveView.
We haven't talked about LiveView yet.
So what does LiveView do?
LiveView is essentially a kind of remote production software program. What it does is it's got a transmitter. This is the receiver here, and it allows you to plug in any camera via SDI or HDMI to that transmitter, and it will take that signal and send it back up to their server, which sends it down to our receiver here, and allows us to take any sort of remote program that we want and feed it into our control room and into our switcher. We can do single cam, but we can also go ahead and do something like we have a remote switching set up for one of our remote courses. We could take that and plug the program feed out directly into that transmitter and send that back as well. So if we needed to kind of be set up in a couple different locations, we actually did this a couple weeks ago. We held a pregame show for the first round of the Big South basketball tournament that High Point was hosting. So their first round game, we did a pregame show for. We cut it and everything out of our control room. We had the main kind of host be in the studio using the wall, but we had sub-hosts over at the arena talking through some of the pregame stuff, and we used our LiveView system to take a feed from there and bring it right in and be able to cut that right into our normal production workflow.
And sorry in advance if it's kind of loud in here. It sounds like an airplane's about to take off, at least in person. I don't know how the microphones are doing. I'd assume that they're probably taking in quite a bit of this noise.
Yeah.
Ultrix is no joke. It's very loud.
Yeah.
So moving on from LiveView, we've got the Key Pro that we've mentioned before. It's just kind of a backup recorder. We've got a 12G video patch bay. So a lot of the lines that are going in to the BSP panels, wall plates, are landing here, and then we have lines that are going into the router.
Yep.
Then we've got our CCUs for the Panasonics.
Yep.
We have the Red Spy server.
Mm-hmm.
We have the Odin frame for comm, and then we have the Interactive Technologies Q server, which is what we're using q-sys to trigger that.
Yep.
Just as a little bit more safety way. It's a little bit of overkill for what we're doing in terms of triggering a streaming ACN scene.
Yeah.
But it's more secure. If q-sys were to go down, we could still absolutely trigger these presets
come back and use
physically from here.
Yep.
So moving on to the next rack. We've already talked about the switch. We have an SRG 2200. It's a sync generator. So this is our master clock for the system.
Yep.
A couple different open gear frames for various reasons. Some that we've yet to tap into.
Yep.
Yet, where we're actually going to be using these for the display ports for the computers that are coming for the gaming machines in the future.
Yep.
They're going to go into that, and then out of that into the router. So it's essentially display port to mini BNC 12G output.
Yep.
Which is great. We also have Q-Server has an open gear card. We're using reference DA, some video DA as well, LTC DA. Pretty great.
Yeah.
Anything else on open gear that I'm missing?
No, that's pretty much it. Kind of like you said, we are going to be really embracing its full capabilities in the near future.
In the future, yeah. So FR5 Ultrix loaded up with 2 of the switcher blades, then a bunch of I/O cards.
Yep.
I think there are 7 I/O cards currently.
Yes.
So we filled up that bad boy. And then we have the Infinity Manager for the KVM. These are all the KVM transmitters.
Yep.
Pretty sleek looking deal to have that much functionality and that little space taken up.
Yeah.
Then we have the MX40 Pro. This is the Novastar processor for the Square V LED wall. Then we get into the big boys. We've got the Expression, 3 channels of Expression right here. You got Voyager node. One is specifically for the camera coming into it.
One is for the wall, so like displaying what you see on the wall.
Right.
And then the second Voyager is for augmented reality elements.
Yes.
So we can build augmented reality elements as well, and we've got a dedicated Voyager for each of those.
Yeah, so the augmented reality does take in the camera feed. So
Yes.
that's how we're feeding
Yes,
it from the Ultrix. Any of the cameras, I mean, not any of the cameras, but I got any of the cameras, I guess.
Yeah.
We're assigning that to feed into the Voyager for the augmented reality.
Yes.
That will go into the LED one, the one that is controlling the node. And so from that, that's feeding the wall processor. We also have an output that's coming directly in from the Ultrix.
Yeah.
So we actually use the LED wall processor to toggle between Voyager input or the Ultrix input.
Yes.
So that's really fun and neat. This next row, we have a bunch of Infinity 4000 series transmitters and receivers. They're just chilling right now on the shelf because the gaming portion in the middle of this design got kind of placed on hold, but all that was already purchased.
Yep.
So it's just chilling there. Network patch bay, audio patch bay, from the wall plates hitting into the Rio. And I think that's it, man.
Yeah, that's everything.
That was
It's a lot, but that's a pretty succinct description of everything.
It's a lot in a very tight amount of space.
Yeah.
So
it
again,
certainly is.
if you want a system like this and you want us to install a system like this, we'd be happy to do it, but we will sell you more racks than what this is so that we can have more space to work in than what this was.
Yeah.
But
it's definitely cramped. Definitely room for expansion.
These were pre-existing.
Exactly.
That's why
Yeah.
it was a budget thing.
Yeah.
So, well, I believe that's everything.
I
man.
think it is, yeah.
Anything you can think of that we're missing?
No, I mean, I think we covered everything pretty well. So
Yeah. If you are still watching this, thank you. You are of the utmost of nerdom that we enjoy and appreciate around here. If you are a university, if you are a church, you are an event venue, hey, listen, we would love to help you design the technical infrastructure for what you guys are trying to do. This is what we love to do. We love partnering with people just like you and designing these systems, implementing them, working alongside great people like what High Point University is. We would love to help you on your next project. You can reach out to us on our website at www.sesintegration.com. There's a form there. You fill that out. We will reach out to you and get your project going. But until next time, thank you so much, Nick.
thank you,
for
Travis.
jumping in. We will see you later.